Welcome back everyone. My name is Sagar and we are back here with another video. So this is the lecture number 16 of our Java and DSA course. And from our previous videos, we learnt about for loop, while loop, nested loops, and we also did some amazing patterns. And I think there are almost 7 videos only on loops. And from now, we are going to cover everything about arrays. So what are arrays, some basic important algorithms, and in this video we are going to cover every basic thing in our arrays. So how to initialize them, how to declare them, and what things are going in low level. So we are going to cover everything, and without making any further ado, let's get started. So our very first question is, what are arrays? So in one word, arrays are data structures. And now what are data structures? So data structures are, I can say, a format that we use to store our data. Now let me explain it to you. So data structures have two words, data and structures. So data can be anything that we are using. It can be numbers, it can be image, video that we are using. And we know that everything is stored in the form of bytes and bits. So that is data. And what are structure? So structure, data structure is something that we use. It is a kind of format that we use to store our data in our memory. So where is data stored? In our memory. And we use these data structures to access the data that we are stored. So suppose for an example, everything here know about parade, right? Or we can say assembly, जो हमारे स्कूल में मॉर्निंग में होती थी. तो उसमें होता क्या था? So there we have to stand in rows. So the, like I can say, smallest person is on the front, and then height of the person will be increasing and increasing, and they will be in a row. So ऐसा ही कुछ होता था. So that format to standing in a row will be called as data structure. So they were standing in a particular format, and that format in our coding, in our programming, is called as data structure. We have some data, we have to store them in our memory, and when we are accessing them, so we have to use some particular format that I have to select first our smallest value, then our largest value, or any other thing. So that thing is called as data structure. I hope you now got this. We will see more example in it, and there are more, so many types of data structure in programming, and we are going to cover about everything. So arrays are simply data structures, but what kind of data structure? We know that arrays are data structure. So using array, we are using some format to store our data in the memory. So what is this format? Arrays are like, suppose for an example, we have a shelf of books, and suppose there are 10 books, and if I want some book with number 3, so I will go there and pick the third number of book, है ना? And arrays are like the same. We will create a shelf, group of collection of objects, a collection of same data. So there were 10 books, so there were similar objects, है ना? So we will create a collection of similar objects in our memory, and we will call it an array, and we were calling that a shelf, है ना? So we will also name our variable array. So whenever we want to access our array elements and items in our array, so we will use that variable name, our array name, and we can access its elements or the data or the item that are in our array. So now we know arrays are a collection of similar objects. It is a data structure. And what kind of data structure? It store values in contiguous format. So first we have our one number of book, then our second number of book, then third book, then fourth book, up to how many number of books we have. So now the first thing, we have to create a shelf, है ना? And that will be our array. So before creating that shelf, we know how many number of books we have to put in it. So in our case, if we have to put our 10 books in a shelf, so we will create an array of size 10. So we have to predefine the size before creating our array and before putting the elements in it. So now we know what are data structures and what are arrays. Now you have a basic idea, right? Arrays are the most basic and most commonly used data structure that we have in our programming. They are almost in every single language, and they are very commonly used. And there are also so many important algorithms that we have in our arrays that we are going to cover in our upcoming videos. So for Java, we can say in one line that arrays are a kind of data structure that store similar values in contiguous format. So I hope now you got this. But that thing is only for Java, that array store similar objects. In different languages, array can store different type of objects, like we were putting books. someone can put their table in it, in table in the shelf, but not in Java. In Java, we have to store only similar kind of values, similar kind of objects. So now we know what are arrays, but why are arrays? Why do we need them? So for that, suppose an example, suppose you are a principal of some school. Now that is a good thing. And you want some data of some class student. So suppose for class 12, you want name of all the students. So there are 30 students in that class and you want name of every single student. So what a teacher can do, either he or she can write name of every student on paper, on single paper, one student name. So there are suppose 30 pages for 30 student name. And then he will give you all the names one by one. So page 1, page 2, page 3. So there will be 30 pages. Or we can use a data structure. That means we can write name of all the students in one page according to their roll number or according to alphabetic order or anything. So what this according to is our data structure, that either we are writing according to their roll number or in alphabetical order or according to their ages. So that thing is our data structure. And the page that we are writing on is now our collection of objects. That is our collection of name. So the teacher will give that single page to you. And now you have a list of all the student name. So instead of using these 30 pages, you have a one list of whole pages, and now you can get all the student name according to their roll number or any other data structure. So I hope this example was good enough, and now let's move ahead. So now we know what are arrays and why we have to use them. So same as in programming, suppose you have 10 numbers, and what you will do, you will assign a variable to every single number. For 1 you will assign a, for 2 you will assign b, according to that for our all 10 numbers. Now if you want to access 1, you will go for a. Now you want to access 10, you will go for some another alphabet. But now this is the main problem. Now you have to remember what alphabet you assign to what number. So instead of doing this, what you can do, you can make a collection of all 10 numbers and put it inside of our data structure, and in our case it is an array. So we will just use an array and put these 10 numbers in a block, or that will be a collection of items. So what we are doing, we are declaring a collection of 10 objects, and these are 10 integers. So we have to define them, that its size should be 10 and these are integers. So अब बातें बहुत हो गई, कुछ प्रैक्टिकल देखते हैं यहाँ पे. लेट अस क्रिएट न्यू जावा क्लास, लेक्चर 16 and main method. So we have to define our array. So how can we define our array? Array will be defined with this. So this square bracket, now this means it is an array, but we have to define what kind of array. Is it going to store our integer values or string values or double or float? Now we have to define our type. So it will be of integer type. So now this is used to represent, this is an integer array. Now we have to define its name. So like we do in variable. So when we are going to declare a variable, so suppose this is an integer variable, so this is a. So this is an integer variable a, but when we are defining our array, so this is array, integer type of array, and now we have to name it. So it will be ARR. So now using this, we have declared an array of name ARR. So that part is now declaration, and that thing is also declaration of integer variable, and that thing is declaration of integer array. And when we have to define some different kind of array, suppose floating array, so we can write it as this, or suppose string array. We will be learning about strings, don't worry. So we can define it as this, but in our case we are going to define an integer array. And after that, how we were initializing our variables, like this. So if I have to initialize some value to this a, so how can I write it? A equal to some value. So suppose a is 0, so I can either write it as this. So this part is declaration and this is initialization. So I am writing these in different lines, but I can also write it in same line. So int a, and I have to now delete it because I can just declare two variables with same name. So I will delete this. So now this means declaration and initialization. So a equal to 0. So now a variable name will hold the value of 0. and same as in this case, I have to now initialize my array. So arr equal to, how can we initialize our array? Array are collection of objects. So can we define our collection in one line? The answer is yes. But how can we initialize it? So first of all, you have to write here new. So new is a keyword. We also saw that thing in right here. You can see here when we were initializing our scanner object, we have to use here new and then a constructor of scanner. But we will be learning about that. So we have to write here new. That means we have to now create a new initialization. We have to create a new array, that a new shelf and a new collection of objects. So what kind of objects? These are integers and integer array. So that means now this arr will be new integer array. So the shelf that we were creating will be now named as arr, and so now we have created that shelf, and after that this semicolon, but there is an error now, and that error is array initializer expected. So array initializer, that means we have to initialize our array with some size value. Now size can be 5. So suppose we have created a shelf and that will contain only 5 books. So this array size will be 5. So that means now we can put 5 values in this array. And same was our example. We can create, we can put 5 books in our shelf. Okay. So we can also write this in one line. So I will delete it from here, and so that means this is an integer array and it is named arr, and that will be a new integer array of size 5. So you have to read it like this, and I will delete it from here. So this is the one way how we can initialize our arrays, but it is not the only way. We can also write it as this. So first we were writing int this array and then its name. We can either write it as this. So this is also a valid syntax. Now that means this is going to be integer and then its name, and after its name we are defining that it is going to be an array. So this is the same thing. But now let us talk about when we have to initialize multiple arrays in one line, when we have to declare multiple arrays. So when we are talking about simple variables, so this simple int, we can declare it as int a, b, c, d. A was already defined, so you can define it as this. You can declare multiple variables in one line, and after that you can use them. B is equal to 2, and c equal to some number, and d also equal to. So using this way you can declare multiple variables in one line. Now that means this b is also going to be an integer, and this c is also going to be an integer, and this d is also an integer. But when we are talking about arrays, so first of all this is going to be integer array, and after that suppose we have to declare 3 variables, 3 arrays, x, y, z. So all these 3 are going to be arrays. Now that thing is clear. But suppose you did some mistake and you declared the variables like this, arr. So first our variable name, our array name, and after that these square brackets. So suppose you have write it as this. So this x is only going to be our array, and these y and z are only integers. Now you can also cross check it. If you try to initialize this x as an integer array, some size, now that is okay. But when you try to initialize this as our integer array, now this is going to give an error, and that is required type int. So this y is integer type and we are providing it integer array type. So now that means these y and z are only integers, and only this x is an integer array. So we have to write it as this if we want all of them to be an array. So this is a very basic thing. I think no one is gonna tell you. And so far we have initialized our array. Now what about values of array? So suppose I want to print our array. So I can directly use this as out our array. Now what will be the output? So you can see here there is some, I don't know what is this, but there is something that are not the values of our array. So when you have to access the values from our array, there is a pattern that we have to use. So we cannot do it like this. What we have to do? So suppose you want first value from our array, that means first book from our shelf. So how can you do it? So you can write it as this: first our array name, that is here ARR, and then the square brackets, and inside them the index. Now index is the number of items that you want, and in arrays there is zero base indexing. Now zero base indexing means the first element will have 0 index, and the second element will have 1 index, and third element will have 2 index. So 0, 1, 2, that means there are 3 values, but here it have 5 size. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So index will be from 0, 1, 2, 3, and last index will be 4. So if you want first item, that is first book, then it will be on 0 index. And I will also tell you why there is this zero base indexing. So we know that array is a collection of objects, and that is here an integer object. So this array is a collection of integer, and when we have selected one value, that means it is one integer now. So we can print one integer using sout, and we can use it here. So that means we are printing array's first element. That means array's first item, that is on 0th index, because in array there is zero base indexing. And now let's run this. What is on 0 index? There is 0 value. Okay. And when we want to get the last value, so last value will be 4, because there is zero base indexing. So when the size is 5, so last index will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So last index will be this size minus 1, because there is zero base indexing. So fourth is our last index, and let's run it again. What is on fourth index? There is still 0. Now this is because the default value in our arrays are all 0. So any index, you can take any index and the value will be 0. So on third index, on our second index, that means on third item, it will be also 0. You can see here, now 0 is the default value for our integer. Suppose we have a float type. So if we have our float array, then the default value will be 0, 0.0, and if we have double array, then it will be 0, 0.00. And if we are declaring some non-primitive data type or our custom classes, then the default value will be null. Now null means nothing, kuch bhi nahi. So default values are here 0, but can we modify it? Yes, we can modify it using the same way. So suppose if you want to modify the first value, so first value will be on 0th index. So ARR of 0, that means we are accessing the first value and we have to update it. So we have to write here equal or some value. So that means we are updating this 0th index value to 3. So that simply means now the first element in our array will be 3. And suppose I want to update the second element. So ARR of 1, because it will be on 1 index, 0 base indexing, and I want to update it to 10. So now the second element that is on 1th index will be now 10. And suppose now I want to update the last value. So last index is 4. So ARR of 4 will be equal to, you can give some value. So now let us check it again. Okay, we have to print something. So suppose we are printing here 0th value, 0th index value. So as out. So first value that is on 0th index, ARR of 0. So what is the value on 0th index? What is the first value in our array? So that was 3. We updated it to 3. And it is 3. So what values are there in our array? So first value is 3, second value is 10, and after that third value is still 0, because default value is 0 and we have not updated it yet. And fourth value is still 0, and fifth value is here 20. So if I want to access the index 4 value, so it will be 20 now, and it is. So this is very simple way how you can update values in our array. Now let me show you how you can print all the values from array. So using this println, we can print one value of our array because it is an integer type, and we can use println on our integers, है ना? So first we were updating, so we are printing here 0th value, and I can repeat this thing. So first 0th index value, then first, then second, then third, and then fourth. So using this we are printing all 5 values from our ARR. And now let's check it. So 3, 10, 0, 0 and 20 will be there. And you can see here 3, 10, 0, 0, 20 because we have updated them. But that is not a good way because we are repeating so many lines. Suppose there is a array of size 5, but suppose there is an array of size 100, so then we have to repeat our lines 100 times. We have to repeat this println 100 times, but that is not a good thing. So instead what we can do, we already learnt about loops. Can we use here loops? What value is changing every time? You can see here this value. So first our value is 0 and then it is increased to 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So our value is starting from 0 and going up to our size minus 1 because our last index is size minus 1 because there is 0 base indexing. I will tell you why there is 0 base indexing. So we know for this value we can directly use here a loop. So I will remove this and I will use here a loop. So using a for loop, and generally we use here I for indexing. So I should be less than, what is there, here is 5, so that is our array's length, but we have to use here 4. So 4 and then I plus plus, every time I will increase, and we have to use this line. So we have to print ith index value. So from 0 to 4. First it will print 0th index value, then first, then second, then third, then fourth. We also have to print fourth value. So I less than equal to. And now let's run it. Okay, that is the same output. So using a for loop, we can print all values from our array. Here we know the size of our array, and that is why we are going from 0 index to our 4 index, because the size of our array is 5. But suppose we don't know the size of our array. Suppose it is something like this and we don't know its size. Suppose we can't see it. So how can we traverse in our array from our 0 to our last index? What is our last index? Our array length minus 1. So that was also our array length minus 1 because our array length was 5. So how can we find our array's length? So length of our array can be this array name. So it was arr dot length. So this length is a field of array. So this length is some value that this arr will hold, and this length is the length of this arr, that will be length minus 1. So our indexing will be from array ki length and minus 1. So now let's check it. So values will be 3, 10, and yeah, there are some zeros, multiple zeros, because our size of array are this something number, and we only modified 3 values. That is 0, 1 and 4. So you can see 0th index, first index and fourth index, 0, 1, 2, 3, fourth index, and the rest of the values will be by default 0. So that is how you can print whole array. So after this, let us see why there is 0 base indexing in our array. So first of all, suppose there is some memory that we are using to store our data, and we have initialized our array. So int array, okay, I have to increase the size, int array, and that will be arr of size 5. We just saw the syntax here. So this array will be of size 5. So in our memory there will be some space allocated for this. So first, this is an integer array, and suppose our integer is of 4 bytes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So there will be 5 different spaces, different contiguous spaces, that will be allocated to our this array. So this will be A, R, R. This whole collection will be called as ARR. and it will be of size. So this is our integer array. So one integer is of 4 bytes. So 4 into 5, it will be of 20 bytes. So we know that our data is stored in our memory, and memory will have some memory address. So suppose this index is our 2000. So 200. So suppose this index is 2000 and this ARR is pointing to this index, this memory address, 2000 memory address, है ना? And this first integer is also on this 2000 index. So this index is 2000, and because it is an integer, so it will be from 2000 to 2004. So here is 2004 and here is 2000, and because the values are stored in contiguous fashion, so from 2004 to 2008 there will be our second value, 2008, and the next value will be from 2008 to 8 plus 4, 2012, and same as in this case, next value will be 2012 to 2016, and same here, that will be 2020. So as the values are stored in contiguous fashion and it is an integer, so from 2000 to 2004 there will be this first value, and from 2004 to 2008 there will be this second value. But the question is the same, why is there zero base indexing? uh, before that let me tell you there is a before that let me tell you there is a formula that is used to before that let me tell you there is a formula to access all the values from this, all the values from our array, and that is first our array's base value, array's base address. So let me write it here. So first array's base address plus our given index, so index, and then multiply it with the size of our data type, and in this case it is an integer, so it will have 4 bytes of size. So this is a formula that is used to get any value from our index. So suppose we want our first value, so array this ARR's base index, and base index is 2000. So 2000 plus what is the index? So we want our second value. So second value is this. So this is our second value and it is on one index. This is the reason there is one base indexing. So it is on one index and we have to multiply this with 4, and that is the size of our data type, 1 into 4. So 2000 plus 4, 2004. So we will get the base address of the data that we want. We want our second value that will start from this 2004, and we can derive that memory address using this method, this formula, array's base address plus our index into this, let me generalize this, into our size of data type, size of data type. So this is the method that we use to get any value of any index, and this is the reason why there is zero base indexing. So when we want our first value, we can see first value is this, and suppose it is 10. So first value is 10 and second value is 20. But when we are using this formula, our base index plus 1 into 4, so we are getting address 2004, and 2004 is for our second value. So we have to consider here zero base indexing. So this will be on zero index. So when we are using here zero value, so 0 into 4, so it will return us 2000 address. That is the base address of our first value. So that is why there is zero base indexing. अगर कोई पूछे कि हम एरे में से आइटम को एक्सेस कैसे करते हैं, तो ये चीज बता देना बस। जो हमारा एरे का बेस इंडेक्स होगा, सो फर्स्ट बेस इंडेक्स ऑफ आवर एरे, देन प्लस index into the size of our data type. So that is the only formula that we use to access elements from our array. And I hope now you got this thing. and when we try to access some value, so when we write it as this ARR of 3, so that means we will first get the base address of this ARR. So where is this ARR stored? In our memory, and we will get its base address. So in this case, the base address of this ARR is 2000, and after that plus this index that is given in this, that is here in the square brackets. So after that this index, so index is there 3, and then we have to multiply size of our data type, and this is an integer data type, and we learned from our initial videos that integer data type is of 4 bytes. So 2000 uh, so 2000 plus 3 into 4, 3 into 4 is 12, so 2012. So 2012 it is here, so we will get our fourth value, that is on third index. So I hope now this thing is clear to you. And there is also one thing that we have to initialize our array before modifying it or accessing it. If we have just declared our array, that we have to create some integer array that will be called as ARR. But still we have to specify that it might be a copy of some previously created array, or it can be a newly created array. But if we have not initialized it yet, then we cannot modify or access the values of our array. So there is an error. Then you can see here variable ARR might not have been initialized. So we have to initialize it. So this will be of size 5. And now let us suppose we have to copy some array. So I will create another array, and I will call it ARR2. And so I have declared it now. So how can we copy it? We can directly write it as this. So that means this ARR2 will be an integer array, and it will be equal to ARR. Now that means this ARR2 will hold all values from our ARR1. So when we try to access this, so when we try to print our ARR2, so all the values from ARR2 will be printed, and let's run it. So it will also have 3, 10 and 20. So 3, 10 and 20 for our ARR2, our second array. And suppose I have to also modify some values for ARR2. Suppose the fourth value was previously 20, but I have to make it 1000. So now let's try to run. So it will give me 3, 10, 0, 0 and 1000. Yeah, that is good. But after this, so since I have modified the values of ARR2, when I try to print my ARR1 array, that was my first array, you can see here, what was that? My first array also have this 3, 10, 0, 0 and 1000. But you can see here, my first array have 3, 10 and then 20. Last value is 20, but here it is showing 1000 for my ARR. So why is this 1000 here? Let me tell you. Because of this, we created some different array, that is ARR2, that will be equal to our ARR. Now that means this second array doesn't make any new copy of our array. It will be just a new name for our same collection. So our collection was ARR, and ARR2 was just a new name for our given collection, for our previous collection. And with this new name, we are updating the fourth index value to 1000. So that means the original value of our main collection will be updated, and our main collection was this ARR. So that is why this is showing us 1000. Let me show you on whiteboard. So suppose there is our memory, and we are somewhere initializing our variable, our array, and we are gonna name it ARR. And suppose there are only 3 values. So this ARR is just a name for this array. So this is our main collection, and this ARR is just its name. So this name, that is also called as identifier. So this name is pointing to this. There we have our base address. Suppose there is any random base address, 4000 for an example. So there is this 4000 base address somewhere in our memory. so there is this 4000 base address, and after that suppose it is an integer, so there is this 4004, 4008, 4012. So this is our main collection, and we have updated some value. Suppose on our zero index, this is first, this is second. So for our zero index, suppose we have value 1. For our first index, we have 9 value, and for our second index, we have 5 value. And that ARR is just a name for our array, for our main collection. This is our array, and this ARR is just a name of our array. Now that is a point to notice. This is just a name of our array, and here is our original array. This collection is our array, and this ARR is just a name that we can use to access or modify or update some value in our array. So what was going on? We were creating a different copy. So ARR2, we were creating ARR2. You can see ARR2 is equal to ARR. Now that means this ARR2 will be now a new name. This will be a new name for our same array. So this ARR, where is this ARR pointing? To this. So this ARR2 will also point to this. So what we were supposed to do, we have to create a clone of this whole array. So we had to make a new array, and with same values 1, 9 and 5, but we are not doing this. What we are doing instead, we are using the same reference from this ARR, and we are pointing this ARR2 to the base address of this same ARR of this same array. So ARR2 will also point to 4000. And when we were updating some value from our ARR2 using our ARR2, so ARR2 is also just a name for our original collection. So when we were updating some value from our ARR2, so ARR2 is just a name. So when we were updating some value from using this ARR2, so the original value will be updated. So suppose we updated some value using ARR2, so note 5, there will be 1000, 1k. And after that, when we try to get all values using our ARR1, so this ARR1 will also get 1, 9 and 1000. So the original value will be updated using any name. Either we can use ARR or ARR2, or there can be multiple names that can point to same address. So there can be multiple names for one collection or even one variable. So we were supposed to create a clone of this collection. That means the new array, we had to create a new array that will hold the same values 1, 9 and 5. Previously the value was 5 here, but we were just taking the same reference of that collection. So now I hope you got this thing, and after that let me delete it. So at this point we are just initializing an array of size 5, and default it will have all values 0. So after that let us fill our array. So suppose 0th value will be 1, and first value will be 2, and same as this. On index second for so you can see here using this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we are modifying all the values from our array. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will be all values in our ARR. So let me now try to print this. And wait, instead of just using our for loop, we can use here for each loop. Now that was the one thing we had to learn. And in for each loop, we can directly get value from our array. Now that is the only syntax. So what does that mean? Let me explain it. So first we have some collection. We must have some collection to use our this for each loop. So ARR is our collection of integers. So here we got this ARR, that is a collection, and before that we have to use this double colon, and now we have to get some value, well, and now that means we are gonna get all values one by one from our array, from our collection. So there is this int, that means we are gonna get integer values, and there is this val, that val is just a variable name that will represent all values one by one. So all values one by one means this val will be first 1, then 2, then 3, then 4 and then 5, and we have to just print it. So you have to know the difference when we are using for each loop. that means we are going to get values. And when we were using for loop, normal for loop, then we are initializing it with 0 and arr dot length. Then here we are getting the index. This I is our index and this val is our value from our array. So in our for each loop, we are just iterating over all the values, and that is the main confusion mostly beginner have. Here we are getting the values from our array, and we have to print the value. So direct value, we don't have to write it as this arr0, arr1. We can directly print here value, and let us check it. So there is this 1 2 3 4 5. बट अब थोड़ा और काम आसान करते हैं. So you can see here we are repeating this line again and again, and you can see the common thing is this is 0 1 2 3 4. So this thing is starting from 0 and going up to this arr dot length minus 1. And suppose we want the values from our user input, then how can we do this? First let me create a scanner object, new scanner object, system.in, and after that, so first let me just write the syntax, and I equals to 0 arr dot length I plus plus. Now we don't need it anymore, so I will delete it. So now that means first our for loop is going from 0 to arr dot length, but our I should be less than length. So that means our I will be from 1 2 3 4, but it cannot be 5 because I should be less than a dot length. So that is the basic syntax to iterate over an array, and after that every time I plus plus. But what is going on here? So that means arr of I, that means every index in our array, so it will be first 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, and then 4. So from 0 to 4 all the indexes will get the value from this sc.nextInt, and we use this to get our integer input. So that means we will get 5 integer input values because 0 to 4 there are 5 values. So we are gonna get 5 integer values from our input, and we will store it in our array. So let us check it now. So we have to give 5 integer inputs, and first it's suppose 20, then कुछ भी random value देते हैं, and that is 5th value. Okay, and when I enter it, you can see here. So using this loop, I am iterating 5 times 0 1 2 3 4, and I am storing every input value. I am storing every input value in our array. So first input value, that is here 20, will be on arr of 0th index because first I is 0, and that is the thing. We use this to get our value from input, and we can use this for each loop to print all the values. We can't use the for each loop to get all the values because we have to store it in indexes. So we need index to sort the values, but it is not necessary. We need index to print the values. We can directly print them using this for each loop. So I think I covered all the basic things in array. But wait, we also have one concept here. Suppose I have to print 5th value, arr of 5. Then what will happen? Let us check it. So what is this? There is something new now. So you can see here there is this exception. We will learn more about exceptions in our object oriented programming, and but here this is exception in thread main. So main is a thread, but we can see here main is a method name, and after that this is our exception name java.lang dot array index out of bound exception. This is our exception name, array index out of bound, and I will close this for now. And in which line you can see here, okay, this is the reason why there is this exception, index 5 out of bound for length 5. Now that is the reason for our exception, and exception is in lecture 16 line number 10, and you can see here line number 10 we are accessing the 5th index from our array. we know that array have 5 indexes, but these are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So array have these 5 indexes because there is zero base indexing. So there is no fifth index in our array, and there is no fifth index, but we are trying to get the value from our fifth index. So because there is no fifth index in our array have only 4 indexes, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are total of 5 values, but the maximum index possible is here 4. But we are trying to get the value from our fifth index, and that is why there is this exception. You can see here index 5. There we are trying to get index 5, which is out of bound for our length 5. We have length 5, so maximum index will be 4. And when we are trying to get the fifth index, we are out of bound. And I think now everything is covered. So now it is time for practice problem. So today in our task 16 we have this: initialize one array and take all values from input. So that thing is very easy, we just did it. We have to initialize the array. So there is this is initialization, and we can take all values from our input using a for loop, and we will just store all the input values in our array. And our step 2 is create a clone of that array into a new array. Now that is the main thing you have to do. You don't have to write it as this arr2 equal to arr1. That will not make a clone. This arr2 just a new name for the original array, but here in your task you have to create a clone. Now that means if we change some value in our new array, then it should not affect our original array, and same for vice versa. If we change some values in our original array, it should not affect our new array. So that is the thing you have to search and you have to do, and share your code in the comment section, and you will get a huge shout out in the upcoming video. So that is it for today everyone. If this video is helpful, go hit the like button and also subscribe to our channel. Subscribe कर दिया करो यार, करते नहीं हो. And thank you for watching.